They say Los Angeles never really sleeps, but there are places in this city where silence feels heavier than death itself. I had heard the whispers, the kind of stories you find tucked away in forgotten corners of Reddit threads or late-night AM radio shows. A hidden tunnel beneath Hollywood sealed decades ago where people vanished without explanation. I didn't believe it, at least not at first. It was supposed to be just another video for my channel, Urban Shadows, where I explored forgotten places and hunted down American legends. My friend Emma wasn't thrilled about it. She hated the dark, hated cramped spaces, and hated, most of all, the feeling of not being able to trust your own senses. But she still came with me, clutching her flashlight like it was the last lifeline to reality. We found the tunnel entrance just after midnight, hidden behind rusted fencing and a half-collapsed wall covered in graffiti. The air smelled of rot, wet stone, and something faintly metallic, like dried blood that had never fully washed away. "Mark, I don't like this," Emma whispered as I filmed the opening shot. "It doesn't feel abandoned. It feels watched." I laughed it off, though even my voice sounded too loud against the silence. The tunnel swallowed light, like a throat that could never be filled. Every step forward felt like stepping into someone's mouth. The walls were damp, streaked with something dark. At first I thought it was mold or rust, but when Emma's flashlight hit one patch directly, I saw the unmistakable smear of handprints, dozens of them, too high, too low, too frantic. "Don't film that," Emma muttered, pulling at my arm. But of course I did. The first 20 minutes were uneventful. Just old bricks, graffiti, and silence broken only by the sound of dripping water. Then the air shifted. It was subtle, like the oxygen had thickened. My breathing felt louder. Emma froze. "Mark, do you hear that?" At first I thought it was water trickling. Then I realized it was coming from deeper inside, a sound like someone quietly sobbing. I panned my camera toward the dark, the beam of my light cutting into the void. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaking despite my attempt at confidence. The crying stopped instantly. Then, as if mocking me, the same sobbing began again, this time right behind us. Emma screamed, spinning around with her flashlight, but there was no one there. Just empty brick and shadows. I tried to laugh it off again, for the camera, but inside I felt my chest tightening. "Old tunnels carry sound weird," I said, though my words tasted like lies. We kept walking, though Emma begged to turn back. My camera caught flickers, shadows darting between beams of light. Once, I thought I saw a figure kneeling against the wall, head in hands, but when I moved closer, the space was empty. Only a fresh, wet streak of blood remained on the wall. Emma clutched my jacket. "Mark, we're not supposed to be here. This isn't just a story. Something lives here." I almost told her she was imagining things, until I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Every few feet, the walls carried names scratched into the stone. Dozens of them, etched deep as though by fingernails. Some were old, faded, others looked fresh, too fresh, and there, carved so deeply the stone flaked around it, was my name, Mark. The camera slipped in my hands. I swear I hadn't touched that wall. Emma tugged harder. "Please, Mark, we have to go. Now." But the sobbing started again, this time louder, closer. Not one voice, many. And then came the whisper. Low, broken, curling through the dark like smoke. "Don't leave us." The whisper didn't just echo. It slid across the walls, curling into our ears like something alive. Emma's hand clamped onto mine, her nails digging into my skin. The beam of her flashlight trembled against the bricks, illuminating streaks of wetness that hadn't been there before. Water? No. I leaned closer. My stomach lurched. It was fresh blood still dripping down the grooves where names were carved. Emma began to sob. "Mark, I'm not joking. We're going back. I don't care about your video." But the tunnel had changed. I spun around, aiming my camera behind us. The passage that had led us here was gone. Not collapsed, just not there. In its place was more tunnel, stretching into black nothing. Emma screamed. I forced my voice steady for the camera, though it cracked on every word. It's just an illusion. These tunnels twist around. We just need to keep track. But inside, I knew the truth. The tunnel had swallowed us. We pressed forward, panic quickening every step. The crying grew louder, more voices joining in. Not human cries, animalistic, raw, like something clawing at the bottom of a grave. And then we saw her. A girl stood ahead of us, barefoot, her white dress soaked and torn. Her hair hung in wet clumps across her face. She didn't move, didn't breathe. The beam of my flashlight caught her eyes, and my heart nearly stopped. They weren't eyes. They were hollow sockets, blacker than the tunnel itself, leaking trails of red down her cheeks. Emma gasped, stumbling back. Oh God, no. I raised the camera with shaking hands. Who are you? I managed to whisper. Her head twitched. Bones cracked in her neck as she tilted, slow and unnatural. Then in a voice that sounded like all the sobs we'd heard layered together, she said, "You shouldn't have come here." The tunnel erupted with sound. Screams. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Screams bouncing off the walls, coming from everywhere at once. My flashlight flickered, and in that strobe of light, I saw them. Figures crawling from the walls themselves, as if peeling out of the stone. Faces stretched, mouths torn open, eyes sewn shut with black thread. Their hands clawed toward us, nails scraping sparks from the brick. Emma dropped her flashlight. It rolled across the floor, spinning its beam. And in that brief spin, I saw the carvings on the wall change. The names were gone. In their place were words carved deep and shaking, as though scratched by someone in pure terror. "We are still here." Emma pulled at me, dragging me forward. "Run!" she screamed. We bolted, the tunnel stretching endlessly ahead. My chest burned, my legs shook, but the screams followed, crawling up the walls beneath the floor from inside our own ears. Then the light ahead appeared. A doorway, faint and flickering like an exit. We sprinted toward it, desperate, lungs tearing for air. I could see it. It was real. The end. But just as we were about to reach it, the doorway slammed shut with a sound like iron grinding on stone. Darkness swallowed everything. And in that suffocating black, a hand, cold, slick, and impossibly strong, clamped down on my shoulder. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. Because in that moment I realized the whisper wasn't just in the tunnel anymore, it was inside my head. "You belong here now." I froze. My mind screamed to turn, to fight, to run, but my body wouldn't move. That hand on my shoulder was ice, fingers digging into my flesh with something far stronger than bone. Emma clawed at me, shrieking, but her voice sounded far away, muffled, like she was underwater. Then the lights snapped on. Not flashlights, floodlights. The tunnel blazed in blinding white, and suddenly, it wasn't a tunnel at all. We were standing in a room, a massive underground chamber lined with broken theater seats, the kind you'd find in old Hollywood cinemas. The walls were plastered with film posters, but the faces on them were scratched out, every actor's eyes torn away. And in the center, a rusted film projector spun, casting shadows that didn't match us. On the flickering wall I saw myself. Not me holding a camera, but me, screaming, running, being dragged by invisible hands down this very tunnel. Emma appeared next to me, on screen, her face pale and stretched, her mouth opened wider than humanly possible as she howled. Emma grabbed my arm. "We have to go. Mark, we have to." The projector snapped. The reel burst into flame. And in that instant, the theater seats filled. Row after row of figures sat there, skinless, hollow-eyed, dressed in clothes from different eras, 1920s hats, 50s dresses, 70s jackets. They all turned their heads to us at once, bones cracking in perfect unison. I dropped the camera. My breath came ragged. "Who are you?" I begged. A voice rose, not one, but hundreds layered on top of each other. "We are the films they never released." Emma screamed, yanking me toward the far wall where an iron door stood half open. We stumbled for it, slamming against it, forcing it wider. Behind us, the audience rose. They didn't walk, they floated, jerking forward like puppets yanked on strings. We burst through the door into another tunnel. My flashlight flickered back on, though I never remembered switching it. The beam fell on more carvings, but this time the names were ours. Mark Fisher, Emma Lewis, both etched deep into the stone. Emma fell to her knees, sobbing. "We're not going to leave. They already knew we'd come." Her words sank in. My chest tightened until I thought my ribs would snap. I grabbed her face, forcing her to look at me. "Don't say that. We're getting out." Then the whisper returned, louder than ever, filling the tunnel like a storm. "No one leaves the black tunnel. Everyone becomes part of the story." The walls began to close, brick grinding against brick, forcing us together. Emma screamed and pushed at them, her hands tearing bloody against the stone. I shoved with all my strength, but the walls kept pressing, crushing us into the dark. The last thing I saw before the flashlight cracked and died was Emma's face, her eyes hollowing, bleeding black, her skin paling until she looked exactly like the girl we had seen before. The camera hit the floor. The screen went black, and then static. Static that went on for hours, until suddenly, faintly, my voice came through. "If you're watching this, you're already in the tunnel too." The old playground was nothing but a graveyard of rust and splintered wood. The swings hung motionless, their chains groaning softly in the wind. The slide was a rusted, twisted wreck, a testament to a long-forgotten childhood. We were bored teenagers on a Saturday night in suburban Ohio, and the old park was a perfect backdrop for our foolishness. My friends, Jake and Maria, had been obsessed with the urban legend of the place. The story went that a young girl named Kayla had died here, and her ghost, a mischievous, malevolent spirit, still haunted the park. "They say if you stand in the center of the playground," Maria whispered, her voice a mix of terror and excitement, "and you call her name 3 times, your shadow will be replaced by hers." I rolled my eyes. "Come on, Maria, it's just a story." Jake, ever the daredevil, laughed. "Prove it, Alex. Go on. Say her name." I scoffed. I was a skeptic, a realist. I didn't believe in ghosts or curses, but the look in their eyes, the thrill of the moment, was too tempting to resist. I walked to the center of the playground, to the exact spot where the legend said Kayla had died. The air grew cold, a sudden bone-deep chill that had nothing to do with the night air. A shiver ran down my spine, a silent, unsettling feeling that I couldn't explain. I took a deep breath. "Kayla," I said, my voice echoing in the silence. I paused, and a low, guttural whisper, a silent mockery of my own voice, seemed to come from the shadows around me. "1. Kayla," I said again, my voice trembling slightly. The whispers grew louder, a chorus of silent laughter that seemed to be coming from the rusting swings in the broken slide. 2. "Kayla," I said one last time, my voice a hollow whisper. The world seemed to hold its breath. The whispers stopped. The air grew still. Nothing happened. I laughed, a nervous, triumphant sound that was swallowed by the silence. "See?" I said, turning to my friends. Nothing happened, but as I walked towards them, my eyes fell on my shadow. The streetlights cast a long, dark shape behind me, a perfect mirror image of my body. But it wasn't my shadow. My shadow had a long, distorted shape, a childlike figure that moved independently of me. It was a faint, terrifying presence, a separate entity that was now a part of my own being. It was Kayla, and she was now my shadow, My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of pure terror. My friends, Jake and Maria, saw the fear in my eyes. They looked at my shadow, then back at me, their faces paling as they registered the grotesque, distorted shape on the ground. It was long, slender, and seemed to flicker at the edges, a thing made of impossible geometry. It wasn't my shadow, it was hers. I tried to run, but my feet felt like they were mired in tar. I felt a cold, ethereal presence behind me, a silent, mocking observer that was now a part of my own being. The shadow moved independently of me, a terrifying puppet with a life of its own. When I stopped, it would continue to walk, and when I ran, it would stand perfectly still. It was a silent, taunting mockery of my own life. Over the next few days, my life became a waking nightmare. I couldn't go out in the sun. I couldn't go out at night. Every streetlight, every passing car, every flicker of light would cast that horrifying, distorted shape on the ground, a constant reminder that I was no longer alone. The shadow would play cruel games with me. It would make me trip on an empty patch of sidewalk, or it would pull me towards a busy street, a silent, terrifying game of life and death. I tried to get rid of it. I ran to a dark room, locking myself in, my heart pounding in my chest. But the shadow was still there. It was a faint, unsettling presence, a silent, mocking figure that moved at the edge of my vision. It was a part of me now, a parasitic entity that was slowly and methodically consuming my life. I looked at my own body in the mirror, my eyes wide with terror. I was no longer a person. I was a vessel for a terrifying, malevolent entity that wanted to destroy me. I had played a children's game, a joke, and I had lost everything. The horror wasn't in the ghost. It was in the fact that the ghost was now a part of me, a living curse that I couldn't escape. One night, as I lay in my bed, the room dark, the air cold, a whisper came from the shadows. It wasn't a voice. It was a thought, a cold, empty void that spoke to me from inside my own mind. "You're so scared," it whispered. "It's a beautiful thing, so much energy, so much fear." I closed my eyes, but I knew it was useless. I was a prisoner in my own mind, a victim of my own foolishness. And the shadow, my shadow, was a living testament to my terrible mistake. The whispers from the shadows became a constant, suffocating hum. I was a prisoner in my own home, a man haunted by his own shadow. The shadow, a parasitic, malevolent entity, was no longer just a frightening presence. It was a terrifying reality, a puppet master controlling my life. The doors would slam shut on their own, the lights would flicker, and objects would move across the room. It was a living, breathing testament to my terrible mistake. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I was a paranoid, frightened shell of a boy, my mind a constant battlefield between my own thoughts and the cold, empty voice of the ghost. It spoke to me in my own voice, a terrifying mockery of my own existence. "You can't hide," it whispered. "You can't run." I knew it was right. I couldn't escape my own shadow, but I had to try. I had to find a way to break the curse. My mind raced, a frantic search for a solution. What was the one thing a shadow needed to exist? Light. I ran to my bedroom, a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. I took out a roll of black electrical tape and began to cover the windows, the cracks under the door, the small holes in the walls, anything that could let in light. My hands shook, but I didn't stop. I had to make the room completely dark. I had to make my shadow disappear. I had to kill the ghost. The room grew dark, the last vestiges of light disappearing as I sealed the final window. The whispers stopped. The air grew still. For a moment, a fleeting, beautiful moment, I felt a sense of peace. I had won. I had defeated the ghost. I was free. But then, a cold, unearthly laugh, a horrifying echo of a child's laughter came from the darkness. It was all around me, a chilling, terrifying sound that seemed to be coming from inside my own head. "You can't kill me," the voice, A terrifying chorus of my own whispered, "I'm a part of you now." I ran out of the room, my body shaking with a mixture of fear and rage. I had to get out. I ran out of my apartment, my feet pounding on the sidewalk. I looked behind me, but there was nothing. No shadow. The streetlights cast a long, dark shape behind me, a perfect mirror image of my body. But my shadow was gone. I looked down at the ground, my heart pounding in my chest. No shadow. I looked up at the moon, but my shadow was gone. I had won. I had defeated the ghost. I had broken the curse. I was free. I never went back to my old apartment. I never saw my friends again. I had a new life, a life free of the ghostly parasites. But every time I saw a person's shadow, every time I saw a reflection in a window, I would feel a cold shiver down my spine. I would see a faint, ghostly mist clinging to them, a silent, menacing presence that was waiting for its next victim. The ghost was not defeated. It had simply found a new way to haunt the world. And I, the one who had set it free, was now a living ghost. A man with no reflection, a terrifying testament to my own terrible mistake. I had always been skeptical about the stories my friends whispered about the old Chicago highway. Urban legends, I thought. Nothing more than drunk teenagers' fantasies. But that night, everything I believed in shattered. I was driving back from my late-night study session at the university. The streets were nearly empty, the city lights fading behind me as I took the exit toward the outskirts. That's when I saw him, or rather, her, standing by the roadside. A figure, thin and hunched, waving a hand as if asking for help. The streetlights cast a dim glow and I squinted. Something about him seemed off. I slowed down and rolled the window down. "Hey, do you need a ride?" I called. His head tilted slightly, no smile, no movement of the lips. Then I noticed it. The absence. No shadow. Not even a faint one stretching on the asphalt. I shrugged. Maybe the light was tricking me. Maybe it was just my imagination. I unlocked the doors, pulling over closer. He didn't move. But as I shifted my gaze, his form seemed thinner, elongated, like smoke stretching into the night. My gut twisted. I wasn't scared yet, just uncomfortable. I decided to keep moving. "Sorry, I can't stop," I muttered, pressing the gas pedal. The figure didn't step back, didn't retreat. He just watched. The moment I drove past, the rear-view mirror caught something impossible. His face was reflected briefly, eyes blacker than the night itself, stretching unnaturally. And then I saw it. Still no shadow. My heart jumped. I tried to convince myself it was just the streetlights, just the exhaustion. But the moment I turned onto the highway proper, the engine stuttered, then died. The dashboard lights flickered and went out. My phone's GPS was dead. Every single electronic device in my car went silent. I fumbled for the flashlight on my phone, but the screen remained black. That's when I heard it. A soft, whispering voice, barely audible over the thumping of my heart. "You can't leave." I swung the flashlight out the window, desperate. Nothing. Just the dim reflection of fog rolling across the asphalt. And then I saw it. Him. Closer, pacing alongside the car, though I hadn't seen him move. His footsteps made no sound. No crunch of gravel, no echo, nothing. And still, no shadow. Panic surged. I tried the ignition again. Nothing. The whispers grew louder, overlapping, like hundreds of voices now, all calling my name. I screamed, but no sound came out. It was as if the night itself had swallowed my voice. And then a hand touched the roof of the car. Cold. Ice cold. My skin crawled. I looked up. He was leaning against the metal, his head tilting unnaturally, eyes locked onto mine. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Yet I could feel it. The threat. The inevitability. I slammed the car in reverse and hit the lights. He disappeared. Just gone. My engine roared to life as if nothing had happened. The whispers ceased. But my reflection in the rearview mirror, my own eyes, looked wrong. Too hollow. Too dark. I didn't stop until I reached the city limits. The streets were normal again. My phone worked. My music played. The world had resumed, like nothing had happened. But I knew he had followed me. And that night I realized urban legends aren't always fiction. Some shadows, or the lack of them, are terrifyingly real. I barely slept that night. Every creak in my apartment sounded like footsteps creeping closer. Every gust of wind against the window felt like his breath. I tried to convince myself it was all in my head. Stress, exhaustion, paranoia. But the mirror told a different story. I caught it first in the bathroom mirror at 3:14 a.m. My reflection moved a fraction of a second later than I did, blinked after I blinked, tilted my head after I tilted. My heart froze. My own shadow behind me on the bathroom wall was missing. I didn't know if I was awake or trapped in some distorted nightmare. I turned, and the room was empty. But I felt it, watching, breathing, waiting. By the next morning, I was paranoid enough to skip my classes. I stayed in my apartment trying to block out the world. But the phone, it didn't help. Texts appeared from unknown numbers. All they said was, "I saw you last night." I didn't reply. I didn't want to. But the next text made my blood run cold. And I'm still here. I called the police, explained everything. The officer politely smiled. "Urban legends, kid. Maybe too many horror stories before bed. You'll be fine." I wasn't fine. That night I saw him again, standing at the end of my hallway. No shadow, no reflection in the glass, just watching. His posture hadn't changed. His eyes were still too dark, his head tilted. I grabbed a baseball bat, trembling, and stepped toward him. He didn't move, but the moment I raised the bat, every electronic device in the apartment short-circuited. The TV, the laptop, even the microwave. The lights went out. Absolute darkness. A whisper filled the room. "You cannot hide." I swung the bat blindly. Nothing. The air was thick, almost liquid, pressing against me. I stumbled back into the kitchen, and the knife block toppled over by itself, knives clattering across the floor. I froze, one of them, hovering in the air, pointing toward me. And then I realized the whispers weren't just around me, they were inside me. My own heartbeat sounded wrong. My thoughts weren't my own. A creeping dread, crawling like ants, telling me that he was in me. I ran out into the night, apartment door slamming behind me. I didn't look back, but when I reached the street, I saw something that almost made me collapse. The shadowless figure was across the road, standing in the empty streetlight glow, but the entire row of buildings behind him was warped, distorted, stretching into blackness. And the whispers followed me, soft, insistent, growing louder. "We are coming. You belong to the night now." I realized then that this wasn't just about him anymore. There were more, an entire army of shadowless watchers waiting for the right moment. By the time I reached my car, hands shaking violently, I could see him in the rearview mirror, closer than I remembered. His eyes fixed on mine, unblinking. And behind him, silhouettes emerged. Figures without shadows, stretching, crawling along the ground, climbing over rooftops, appearing in reflections that shouldn't exist. I started the engine and floored it. The city lights blurred into streaks, but in my peripheral vision I kept seeing them, shadowless, faceless, endless. I didn't dare glance at the rearview mirror anymore. When I finally reached my friend's apartment, I banged on the door. She opened it, confused. "What's wrong?" I tried to explain, but the moment I mentioned the streetlight figure, she froze. Her eyes widened in terror. I didn't understand why, until I looked at her reflection in the glass behind the couch. No shadow. I realized then, with horror I couldn't even breathe through, that it wasn't just me. He or they had already begun to take them all. The legend wasn't just real. It was contagious. By the time dawn crept into the city, I was beyond exhaustion. My friend's apartment felt like a fragile bubble of safety, but I knew it wouldn't last. I could feel it creeping, that cold, invisible presence that wasn't bound by walls or doors. I tried to contact anyone, police, family, friends, but every call went dead. Every screen went black the moment I held it. And then I saw them. On every reflective surface, the windows, the refrigerator door, even a spoon in the kitchen, they were there. Standing silently, motionless, shadowless, faceless, watching. I couldn't move. My thoughts scrambled in panic. And then, the whispering came again. Not from outside this time, but inside my head. Words I didn't recognize, speaking in a language I somehow understood. You cannot escape. We are endless. We are hunger. We are the void. I bolted out of the apartment, running blindly into the streets of Boston. The city felt different, stretched, warped, unreal. Every person I passed had no shadow. Every reflection was empty. And every streetlight flickered, revealing more of the endless silhouettes, the shadowless watchers. Somewhere deep in my mind, a terrifying thought emerged. They were never alone. Every shadowless figure I saw had a counterpart inside someone else. They didn't just follow. They inhabited. They multiplied through the living. I ducked into an alleyway, hoping to hide. My chest heaved, my hands shaking uncontrollably. And then at the far end of the alley I saw him, the first one I had noticed. But now he wasn't alone. Around him dozens of shadowless shapes gathered, their forms writhing, stretching, pressing against each other. They looked like human shapes, but distorted, unreal, as if made from the absence of light itself. I realized, with a shiver of icy terror, that the stories I had laughed off in high school, the urban legend of the shadowless walker, were true. And they weren't just legends anymore. They were the future. One figure separated from the rest and stepped toward me. I felt the air thicken, every breath a struggle. It moved slowly, deliberately, never blinking, never making a sound. Yet I could hear the whispers of countless voices all at once, drowning out my own thoughts. You cannot hide. I turned and ran, sprinting through streets that seemed to twist endlessly, turning familiar paths into unfamiliar mazes. My legs burned, my lungs screamed. But no matter where I ran, they were always there, always waiting, always behind me, in front of me, inside the reflections, inside my mind. And then I tripped. I hit the ground hard, scraping my palms. I looked up, and the shadowless walker was looming above me, impossibly tall, impossibly close, faceless, unblinking. The other silhouettes surrounded me now, a circle of nothingness pressing in. The whispers became deafening, vibrating inside my skull. You belong to the void. In a final act of desperation, I closed my eyes and screamed. And then, silence. I opened my eyes. The city was empty. The streets were deserted. Not a shadow in sight, not a single reflection. The silence was absolute. I felt something crawl along my spine, an empty presence. But when I turned, nothing. And that's when I noticed my own reflection, or rather, the lack of it. My shadow was gone. My reflection was blank glass. I realized with paralyzing horror that it had claimed me. I was no longer me. I was the void. And behind me, just out of sight, I could feel the others gathering, waiting for the next. The urban legend wasn't just a story. It was the beginning of a hunger that never ends.